So we're going to continue with our last session for NatCon 2020. We are going to learn about tech tips utilizing technology effectively for collaboration. Brought to you by Tyler Blaz, Treasurer of JETAA Chicago, and our very own, one of our CRs, Adam Ledyard out of JETAA PNW. Dozo.
I can wash dishes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the brief introduction. I'll go ahead and just reintroduce myself as well as the lovely graphic behind me created by Chicago's Zara. Thank you. Shout out to Zara. I am Tyler Blaz. I am the treasurer for the Chicago JETAA chapter. Recently temporarily transplanted up to the Great North in Canada for a brief time, but Chicago is my home. I was in Miyagi, just for a little bit of background, I was in Miyagi-Ken as an ALT from 2015 to 2017. And I'll go ahead and Adam, if you're okay, kind of just transitioning a little bit later as we get to your slides, we can do that.
Yep.
Or do you want to give a brief? Okay.
I'll go into it when I get going. So take it away.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and pull up the presentation. All right. Let me share my screen first. That is the most important part. All right. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So like Faye said, we are going to be talking a little bit today about tech tips, utilizing technology effectively for collaboration. In my opinion, this is a very, very general and wide-ranging discussion. So my intention is to kind of put forth my own ideas, some of my own preferential softwares and websites that we've used to kind of keep collaboration up and keep communication with our chapter. And I think Adam's going to do the same kind of with his slides, what he's been using most often for his own chapter. But what I would like this to become is something more of a discussion, especially at the end. We can definitely have a question and answer period if you guys have questions for us, but I would also like to hear from your guys' perspective. I'm sure many of you have used our technology before, or my technology, the technology that we've been using before. And if you have some best practices, or if you have even tips and advice on how you've been using some of these features, then please let us know. Okay. So first of all, I would like to just point out, and again, I don't necessarily know exactly how in depth all of the different chapters have gotten into using some of these different items I'm going to talk about, but one thing that we have used pretty frequently, especially in the advent of COVID times, is the Zoom webinar functionality. Now, this is going to be different from obviously the regular Zoom subscription of just having Zoom meetings, and even the regular Zoom subscriptions where it's like Zoom and Pro. The webinar functionality is a little bit different in the sense that you can assign different attendees different roles. You can have panelists or speakers versus the kind of audience members. And so this is going to be most effective when you're holding events that you would like to have maybe some hosts, some panelists, some speakers doing the majority of the presentation, doing the majority of the speaking, and kind of advising on their own experiences or their own opinions on a specific matter. And you have audience members who are attending who are not necessarily engaging in the same sense that those panelists are engaging in, right? So, and I have, you can kind of see up here too, I have a few of our examples of the JETAA Chicago events that we've hosted that some of you may or may not have attended. But we do have, it's very distinct in terms of what just a Zoom call is versus this webinar. It's much more of a presentation. It's much more of a large scale event where you can have many more people in the audience kind of observing the panelists and the hosts. One thing I would like to point out is that this Q&A functionality that exists for the webinars is really, really helpful for allowing, again, the panelists and the hosts to speak, to engage in a conversation while having the audience still engage and still participate, but in a less direct way. So one thing that the Chicago JETAA chapter, I think, has done pretty successfully is we have had, maybe some of our JETAA chapter members or I should say board members, kind of monitoring the Q&A functionality during these webinars. We have them kind of taking in the questions and then being able to relay those to the hosts, to the moderators, and to the panelists themselves, so that they can kind of field those questions. You know, you can have several, you can have dozens of questions, but it works really well to have you know, one of our board members kind of pick out and say, all right, which questions do we really want to push forward to the panelists to answer? Because some of the questions might be, you know, a little bit similar, and it's kind of good to get a more wide range of questions when you have only a specific amount of time for those panelists. And so you can kind of see here, I've just pointed out, we have had a few events, an outgoing JET Diversity of Experiences webinar. We've had a Black Lives Matter Kansai webinar and a Hiroshima Nagasaki webinar, kind of addressing the issues of what that means today. And so these were, again, something that I take very little credit for these these events, definitely my Chicago JETAA folks, but I think that they were incredibly successful in being able to use this webinar functionality to concentrate the, you know, the audience's attention purely on the panelists, making sure that those panelists and the speakers were had enough room and space to speak about their experiences while still fielding a lot of different questions from the audience. And I have just a few, in some of my slides, I have a few points for paid versus unpaid. And I think that, you know, of course, the Zoom webinar, I'll make this clear, the Zoom webinar functionality is, for those of you who aren't familiar, it is paid. You have to pay an extra fee per month to allow for webinars to be held. And obviously, it's just different from the unpaid Zoom membership in that it's not just going to be a Zoom meeting where kind of everybody has the same level of interaction. You're able to kind of speak to the same, you know, to the same degree and interact in that way. All right, and again, I know many of you have already experienced with the Zoom webinars, but I just kind of want to touch base on what JETAA has been doing. All right, this is a really important thing that I'd like to point out for a much more recent kind of occurrence for our chapter that we've been using a lot of is the Canva utilization from our chapter and also the subscription that we have here. So Canva, for those of you who may not know, is a graphic design software. We are able to produce banners, advertisements, invitations, event posters, Instagram posts, really anything you would need to, you know, kind of pretty up and make appropriate for social media posts, especially. And I put advertisements on there. You know, JETAA chapters are not really advertising a ton, but I think that kind of is in general for, you know, producing more marketable documents and more marketable posts. I think this, the Canva software has really helped it, made it easy for us to very quickly and effectively throw up different posts on Instagram and other social media outlets. I have just a few of our posts on the side there as well. Well, feel free to take a look at those. Hopefully some of you have seen those already. And again, the paid versus unpaid aspects of this, the paid version does come with some premium images, and I know format conversion is a lot easier with the paid version of Canva than the unpaid. And again, it's kind of what you are deciding to do with your chapter's particular funds and what you're hoping to get out of a, you know, if you're choosing to use Canva. But I also wanted to point out here, Pixabay or Pixabay is if you are using an unpaid version of Canva, this is particularly useful to get those kind of free vector images that you might not get with a premium subscription to Canva. And I will point out, again, these are all my fellow JETAA. These are all the production of my fellow JETAA chapter members, not me. So all credit goes to them. All right, so I do have to take a moment here, just a little shout out. So I know that Gabe and Laura have both used Mentimeter in their presentation, so I really don't even have to do a presentation on this because they've done a fantastic job of kind of showcasing what it is able to do. But the Mentimeter software that we have chosen to use for this year has really been incredibly useful. I can't understate how many events we can bring this to. We can bring Mentimeter to and ask really everyone in the audience to participate in a way that really sparks conversation. Mentimeter brands itself as an interactive presentation software. We kind of refer to it as a kind of like a survey software is what we end up using it most for, is to kind of survey audiences and kind of try to grasp what the general consensus is on a question. Excuse me. So again, surveys and also open-ended questions. So as you could see with Laura's amazing presentation as well, she had a few survey questions where she had the questions kind of pre-made, and then or the answers pre-made, and then she also had some open-ended questions where you can kind of free-form text what you would like to answer. I think that one of the strongest points of this particular software is the happy hour conversation starters that we tend to struggle for in the Zoom sphere. I think with COVID, with the advent of COVID and this Zoom meeting sphere where we're trying to have events, we're trying to have conversations, we're trying to have discussions, it really does help to have, whether it's casual or maybe a little bit more formal, it really does help to have Mentimeter, throw up a question and say, hey, what is your opinion on this? How do you feel about this particular topic? Ranging from, again, very professional questions to much more casual questions. It really does help to kind of jumpstart people's, their opinions and their thought processes, because when you bring 40 people onto a Zoom call and you're like, hey, have fun, enjoy, no one's going to speak up and be like, hey, I'm going to lead this. And, it can oftentimes be a little bit difficult and awkward to jumpstart those conversations. So I think everyone in the Chicago JETAA chapter really, values Menti and what they're able to kind of bring to the table. Really quickly, if you guys don't mind, would you like to go to menti.com real quick? I have just a quick presentation just to show you guys exactly how contentious the software can be. So if you want to use that code again, up in the top middle, what is your favorite Combini? Go to menti.com and then type in that code and throw in your favorite Combini. Oh man, strong lead for Lawson. There's the Family Mart love. That's what I want to see. And so I think one of the most, one of the most important things, and that's what I'm trying to kind of illustrate here, is that you take a very, you start at nothing. You don't really have a conversation ongoing, or you haven't really started a particular conversation in an event yet. Menti is super, super easy to have a prepared question brought to the table. You throw it up there. We have one for Coco. My immediate sense is, who put that? Why did you put that? Like, what's wrong with you? I'm just kidding. I think I saw one Coco in Japan the entire time I was there. So, but that's kind of the point of Menti, is to kind of jumpstart your guys' imaginations, thinking about your opinions. Lawson's obviously taking a pretty strong lead here. I'm not super surprised, but and to try to push it along in a way. It only really takes a few of these presentations, a few of these questions and these surveys to kind of get people talking, maybe about what they're interested in or what they have questions about. And we have also used this, I will say, this is a fairly lighthearted question, but we have used this in some of our more serious discussions as well. So with some of the webinars, we've brought up, it really helps with open-ended questions. If you say, how did the speaker make you feel? Or what did you learn from the speaker that you didn't know before? And so some of those open-ended questions, sometimes it's good to just put that in the chat, kind of like we're doing here as well. We're having chat and also the software, but it's also really helpful for situations like that. All right. Does anybody want to say the other? I see one of. Does anybody want to bring it up real quick before we move on? You don't have to, or you can chat. I'm not necessarily in the chat, but.
I did the other because I was on a really tiny island. We didn't have any of the main convenience stores, so we had we had an everyone convenience store. I don't know if everyone saw that.
Ah, okay. I was trying pretty hard. I was like, oh man, what other commonplace convenience stores? But that makes sense. Okay. Thank you for that. So again, it's very easy to use. We actually do not use the paid version of Mentimeter. We use the unpaid version. So if you go to the paid subscription for Mentimeter, you get added questions and a few premium features, like the themes for the questions can be different. right now, if you just have the unpaid version, you can only make 2 questions per 1 presentation. So you can have like 1 presentation be 1 question and then 1 question. You can, obviously they just continue into one another. You can use the same login code. But we really haven't seen a need to have the paid version at this point because you can create more presentations. So you can have 1 presentation, 2 questions. You can create another one with 2 questions. So very easy to use, very straightforward. And we've gotten a lot of use out of it, especially in this, unprecedented time of COVID. All right. And then the last one I would like to talk about in kind of engaging our audiences, especially during this time of COVID, is CrowdPer. So we have used CrowdPer. It's a trivia software for some of our virtual trivia events. Again, some of you may or may not be aware of the Chicago JETAA trivia events that we've had. We had Avatar: The Last Airbender, Harry Potter, and a Halloween trivia event. While there are many, many different configurations and settings in CrowdPer, on the back end when you're actually setting up the trivia, it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty straightforward in kind of where you need to be filling out the different information. I know there's also a lot of opportunities throughout the trivia where you can kind of zoom out and say how many people have this amount of questions correct. Who's in the lead. What CrowdPer does is they have what's called experiences. And I'll talk a little bit about that. It's point 3 there, paid versus unpaid. But in the unpaid version of CrowdPer, there's a limit of 3 experiences of 10 questions each. So for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender, we have the 3 books. So we did 3 experiences. 1 experience was 10 questions for the book. And again, we had a lot of success with this. I think it was very, very, fun for all the audience members who were involved. I know we had a lot of fun setting up some of these events. The paid membership, again, if you guys in your chapter, if you're familiar with this or you're looking to kind of find a virtual trivia software, the paid version is you can have up to 20 experiences. I believe, can't remember the exact number, but the participants also is increased too. I forgot to mention that in the free version. The free version is only 20 participants for the trivia audience, whereas the paid is 100 participants. So basically, in line with you just get more experiences, more questions per experience, and the participants are a little bit, you get a little bit larger participant pool for that. And if you did miss out on some of these events, the trivia events, they were very fun, and we hope to do some in the future if you guys are interested. I realize I messed this up as well. I meant to say this in the beginning, but I just wanted to give a little bit of background as well. I'm not at all a software engineer. I'm on the very front end facing side of tech. I'm a tech layman. In terms of I like things to be pretty user friendly, and I like things to be able to be pretty navigable based on my what I'm seeing and how I'm trying to set it up. And in my experience, these 4 slides I just talked about are really in line with my expectations there. They've all been pretty easy to use, fairly straightforward, especially for someone who's not incredibly the most tech savvy person in the world. Again, many of you may already be familiar with these, but if not, and you are interested in them, I'm obviously here. And I know a lot of the JETAA Chicago members have also been pretty well versed with these. So I'm going to switch it over to Adam right now, but you guys can definitely throw some questions at me towards the end if you guys have anything.
All right, thanks, Tyler. So hopefully, hopefully but I am one of the country representatives for the U.S. And I was formerly the president and treasurer for a number of years for the PNW JETAA over, in the Seattle area. And when I'm not, doing all these fun stuff with JETAA, I am working for as a software developer, more specifically a computational linguist. If Tyler is the front end and making things all pretty and doing GUI stuff, I'm in the back end doing like super complicated command line stuff. I enjoy doing everything from the command line and writing different software for different things, all these different like microservices and the cloud computing and all that fun stuff. So I can get real down into the weeds and get real technical as far as all that goes. So I'm asking Tyler if I get too jargony, and if there's any tech things that you don't understand as a layman, please chime in and say, hey, what exactly is that? So that we can keep everyone at the same level of knowledge, because we can definitely go all day with some really fun, interesting things from my side of things. So basically what I did was I did a tech survey a few months ago, and thank you for the chapters that did responses to that. And my next few slides are going to be kind of based off of that. And I'll probably go in and show you the results from the tech survey for the demo portion of this stuff, because as my job, I do a lot of prototyping and getting things to work and making it so, usable, and kind of showcasing what it can do. So I'm a big proponent of showing interactive demos, but it's always very risky to do live demos during this kind of stuff. So hopefully all my demos are going to work, but we can go in and kind of see of some of the power of these different things. And I kind of came up with 3 kind of buckets, and I'm focused more on the back end of stuff. So chapter organization and communication and stuff like that. So I decided to go with communication, organization, and collaboration. So for communication, for the most part, one of the big responses was MailChimp and Facebook is what I was seeing. And I'm going to focus on MailChimp here because it's broader, because it's based on email, and most everyone has an email with this, so that it can target the largest audience as far as communication goes. And MailChimp is, at the very surface level, very easy to use, and you can just send out a mass email. Like if you want to use it just for that, that's great. But you can go very deep and do some really cool stuff, especially with the audience section, which can double. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 chapters that are using it as a membership database. And it can double as that if you want something that's kind of tagged or, within that communication sphere. And one of the biggest benefits I liked with this audience is the tags functionality, because then you can get subsections of your audience, so your membership, and do targeted emails without having to go in and manually choose the exact people you want. So I have, the JETAAUSA MailChimp, and I have everyone that's been getting emails is in there with the tag NatCon 2020. I also have, the chapter tags and the executive author tag. So I could go in and hit, I want to email all the presidents of all the chapters. I can go in and just select it, and it sets it up for me. So tagging is very, very useful when you're using the free version of MailChimp, because there's only one audience. So you have to work within one kind of database of people. So tagging can, slice it up really easily, and you can get access to them pretty quickly. And you can also search, like, how many members do I have that are in Idaho or whatever. All of this can be done in Google Sheets as well. So a lot of this functionality can be swapped back and forth. And both, I know PNWJ uses the Sheets, and I'll get into that when you can make it even more powerful if you get down in the weeds with that. But the great thing is the archives for all the emails are accessible from a website. So you can reference old emails, which I've been doing with all your communication. So the demo has been all the emails for NatCon, right? So instead of like always printed, saying what the Zoom link is, I'm linking the past email. So there's one source of truth, which is always good. Having one source of truth for everything. If you copy stuff and it's living all over the place, no one knows where to go to get the actual source of truth. So if you have one spot with that information and it's accessible from anywhere, then half the battle, that's pretty much half the battle, right? To make it easier not to lose things, which, Google Drive is very infamous for swallowing things. So it's it can get out of hand pretty quickly if you have multiple copies of different documents and you're like, where is that information? No, that's a copy. That's the old version. That doesn't have the version. It's over here. It's like, wait, can you share it with me again? It's like, but you already have it. It's like, oh, wait. And then you're like, half the time is trying to find the information. So finding a way to keep things accessible at a surface level is very important. So I really like the archives of these different emails because it just archives it and you can just go and look at it in your website. And you can also use those former emails as a new email. So you can import it as a template, which is great. So templates are great to keep consistency. So you have a basic template, but you can also import a former email you did. So because if you want to repeat information, to iterate it. So all the times that I've been doing the emails, I've had the section for the reimbursement that's happened multiple times. And I did that to, keep it fresh in everyone's mind, just the same way as Faye has always been kind of reiterating it here in the meetings. I'm trying to reiterate it in emails as well when it's important. So using the templates, so reusing stuff is great too. So you can, rev on these things and get these things banged out super quick, and you're spending less time redoing work, right? The bane of my existence is rewriting code that I already did. And I'm like, I already did this. I want to do it again. The best programmer is a lazy programmer because they'll write a program to do everything and they're really good at it. So set yourself up to be lazy, and the less clicks, the less typing to get things out, the better, because then, you can get things out great. And so then there's also the question of getting everyone into the database. There's a lot of great aspects to MailChimp where you can import it either through a file, a copy paste. You can set up a submission, like a registration form. That whole section there with setting up the registration form, you can add new columns besides the basic birthdays, address, and stuff like that. You can put what chapter you're in, or are you a JET or you're a FAJ, that kind of stuff. You can dedicate a column to certain information within these forms. And what's great is getting all of your applications to interact with each other nicely. So you can take this form, this registration form, and embed it in your website by a copy paste, right? Or I think so the different website building tools can have plugins. One of the plugins may be MailChimp, where you can import your registration form without having to do any HTML, and it just kind of pushes it in there. And then everything kind of flows from your website into your MailChimp, and everything is gravy. Everything's talking to each other. Everything's doing great. I love it when the flow of information is non-stifled and it's easy to get to things and stuff like that. So communication, super important. MailChimp is a great tool. Definitely recommend it, at least for emails and stuff like that. Other communications that came up in the discussion was, Slack and SMS and Facebook Messenger and stuff like that. Those are great tools as well. But I think it's important to make sure that you're communicating with it's easy to get all your information out to your members. Smaller scale communication with your board is definitely board dependent. So I'm not going to say one size fits all. If you're all better at doing just group text, or if everyone's on Facebook, then Facebook Messenger might be great. Line is great because stickers make things much more fun. Slack is awesome for organizing things. I'm a big fan of Slack. Obviously, I've been promoting it, and it's great. Thank you, Megan. Shout out for getting people. I think you got a bunch of people to join the NatCon Slack with your plugs for it. So that was awesome to see. Next slide. Let's talk about organization. So Google, basically from the tech survey, basically everyone's using Google Drive, Gmail, and that kind of stuff. So the basics, documentation, Google Docs and your sheets and stuff like that. And I'll probably be doing a demo of some of this stuff later, but you can go the Google apps, they don't advertise very well as far as all of the stuff that they can do. It's amazingly robust and powerful, the stuff that you can do. And I've been digging into it for the past couple of years. And one of the projects that I started out with PNW JETAA is making our membership database smarter. In that the goal is to have the database or the Google Sheets, right? So we have a form that for registrations and it feeds into there. And what happens if a person needs to update their information? They go and refill out the form, right? Now you have duplicates. And the hard part is condensing those duplicates, right? Because you need to go and find the other entry, and then you have to consolidate which information is new and stuff like that. So the goal of the project is to create a consolidation where the duplication is automatically merged, and then you can see where the new information come from. So so basically finding their role in the sheet and updating either the address or whatever. And it's a little more complicated than I thought it would be, because getting a unique identifier for a member is a little bit tough, because names change, locations change, emails change. So doing a unique identifier for an actual member can be a little tricky. Basically, I came up with it being first and last name on JET, and JET year and JET prefecture. Kind of that combination is, I think, unique enough to get us to get the membership within the PNW pretty well. Obviously, there's probably some kinks in there, but that's kind of the thing I've been looking into. You can attach code if you have any membership that knows how to code. This is great project stuff. I think, Dan, you were talking about like having a single ownership of something. It doesn't have to be in an event. It can be, developing your membership database. You don't even have to have a front-facing role to help out your chapter. You could be the background guy or gal or whoever, whoever's the programmer can go back there and really get the things going and streamlining things with that. So, and a lot of this stuff is version history as well. You can go back and see previous versions of all these documents, and tagging the version with like a name, like a version 1 or whatever, is really important, because that information you might thought you lost, someone overwrote it, you actually can go back. You can see who added all this information. You can see who edited it. You can, and if your Google Drive's been around for 10 years, you can go back and actually see who it was that actually edited it, and you can probably go trace back the person that did it and ask them, hey, what was the impetus for this? If they even remember, if it was a 10 years ago edit kind of thing. So version history is very important. It's awesome. And it's in Google. It's just there. All the documents have version history. Other apps like Google Draw are great too. You can create diagrams, and visuals are very, very powerful. Even technical visuals are super important. And Google Draw helps with that. You can kind of make images. And then if you go super hardcore, I'm going to do a demo on this later because we'll have plenty of time. Colab, if you're familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, it's basically a visual editor for the Python programming language within a browser. And you can do a lot of really cool stuff. And I'm going to show how I kind of connects to a Google Sheets and create visuals, and kind of you can do custom queries on stuff. So I'm a big proponent of data-driven kind of things. So digging in to all the different Google apps, and it's just crazy what kind of stuff you can do in there, because you can, like the coding thing, it actually boots up a cloud virtual machine that will do all your coding or code processing. It's not going to code for you. You're going to have to write the code yourself. But the machine is not going to be doing it locally. You can actually do it in the cloud, and it's all free. Within this ecosphere. So Google Apps is super, super powerful. I'm a big proponent of it. But that's definitely organization. It can get out of hand, so you have to really clamp onto it. But Google Apps, Google Drive, all that stuff, very important for keeping a chapter running smoothly. And then on to collaboration. And, if you want to do the next slide, basically the Google Apps is definitely great for collaboration. You can do document generation and all that kind of stuff within Sheets and stuff like that. I set up the tech tips sheet so we can add stuff together. But the thing about Google Drive is things can get lost. You need to be a part of an organization to edit things. It's usually not a good idea to open it up to anyone who has the link. So you have to kind of relegate that kind of stuff, and having it in a central location based on some chapter, they might delete the document that you were collaborating on. If this cross-chapter stuff, it makes things a little more complicated. Like inter-chapter, like in your chapter internal collaboration, Google Apps is great because you can stay within your protected Google Drive, and you won't have any kind of bad things happen to your data. But I'm kind of spearheading an idea here based on, because I work with tech and we do a lot of documentation, and there's a platform called Confluence, and we track issues with JIRA and stuff like that. But that obviously costs money, but it's kind of an interactive way to create documentation and collaborate, and it's all on a GUI within the web browser. But GitHub is kind of, traditionally used for programming and code and software and stuff like that. But one of the lesser known kind of functionalities of GitHub is it does wiki generation. So it's just basically like a simplified version of Wikipedia. Wikipedia, everyone goes and kind of edits and stuff like that. And what we can do, I set up a kind of a demo here of online collaboration, the wiki. And we'll go and I'll kind of look at that a little more once we get through this. But this kind of focuses it on documentation, and it's really easy to get to. It's not going to disappear into someone's drive and you'll never find it again, because the search functionality for Google Drive is atrocious. It's really hard to find stuff if you don't know what it's named and that kind of thing. But this kind of collaboration here is solely focused on documentation. And what we can do is we can pass ownership around. Like currently the owner of this kind of GitHub location or space is owned by the country rep at JETAAUSA.com email. But at some point we can add owners, whoever wants to join. Obviously, you don't have to be a coder, because a lot of this stuff can be done within the GUI and just regular wiki generation. And I'll probably create a wiki on how to create wikis to lower the entry level of this kind of stuff. But the kind of, I want to see, I'm trying to throw stuff at the wall for this collaboration stuff, see what sticks. If it doesn't work, that's fine. But I really like something that is decentralized, open source, meaning it won't get lost, and the keys to it won't be lost as well. That kind of stuff. So if we have any questions, we can do a little question break here, but then I can go into some fun demos as well of a few of the different things that I kind of said in general. I just want to show some concrete examples.
Yeah, and I was going to say this can definitely be something we go into a little demo with Adam. But one question that I had during your very informative presentation was with GitHub, with the collaboration space, are the products and what you're using GitHub for, is it kind of the same intentions that you would have using like Google Apps, and like that kind of collaborative space, or does it tend to be like different projects you're working on or different kinds of conversations you're having? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, Google Drive is good for official documents that you're going to be, that's going to have a solid state at some point. So bylaws, once you have them ratified and signed, then they're kind of static until you go into the process again. With these wikis on kind of GitHub, they're living documents. Like anyone can update it who's part of the group. Obviously we can't open it to everyone, but if you want to join, you request to join and you get in, and then you have edit access, and then you can kind of edit it just like Wikipedia. So on a a much reduced scale, but we can have people go in and edit, and if people don't like it, they can kind of re-edit it if they want to back it out if they don't think it's right. But obviously, if there's some conflicting kind of information, there's also a kind of discussion portion of GitHub as well, where we can kind of hash out differences as well. So it's kind of more geared for things that are always changing, right? Same with software, version 1,
Gotcha.
version 1.0. There's a small bug, we need to just tweak it a little bit, like a documentation, you fix a little bit of grammar, or you need a new section, or that website doesn't work anymore, we just need to update the link.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, just like a website, but like anyone can get to it, instead of you having to have the keys to get into the website. And there's all this extra crap around websites, right? Where you have to like worry about the format and stuff like that. This is a very set format. You only get a few options, very bare bones, and it's focused on the documentation. And that's it, right? And then there's also code too. So if we ever do develop any software that is JETAA related, like maybe we're filling a gap in kind of the JETAA sphere that no free application can really solve. This is a place to do it as well.
Awesome. Any questions? I'm not sorry, I'm not particularly paying attention to the chat right here, but any other questions or anything before we dive into any demos or anything?
Go ahead, Dan.
I just have a quick thing that's worked as a solution, and you can fact check me if this isn't the best one, but really just recognizing that everything we create in the Google Drive has a unique URL. So basically bookmarking in my browser and making browser folders and subfolders and keeping it organized outside of the drive, and then just going directly to those documents from there. That's what's worked best for me. Because you're right, things get lost, and just having it quick, but I just wanted to.
And you added it to the sheets. Thank you, Dan. Awesome. Yeah. All right. So we can do more questions here in a bit, but I'm going to go ahead and if you want to stop sharing, I will go ahead and share my screen, and we can kind of look at some of this stuff. All right. So I'm going to share that. Hopefully everyone can see my Chrome window here. Basically, so here's kind of a breakdown of the tech survey that I did a few months ago. I just want to go over this. Getting responses obviously is the first part. It's the hardest part. Mari definitely highlighted that. It's really hard if you don't get the data. You need the data. So that's the hard part. Once you have the data, then you can start doing some fun stuff with it to kind of like target what you want to do. So this kind of informed me kind of what I wanted to look at. So I wasn't sure what people were using for communications, and I had an inkling, but obviously if you don't have the data, it's all speculation, right? So communication, Facebook, MailChimp, mass emails, website, Instagram, and then a tail of a bunch of other fun stuff. And this has kind of informed me that I probably should talk about MailChimp, because Facebook is great for connecting people, but it is kind of multi-purpose. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of bloat to it that's not related to communication. So I wanted to kind of focus on something that was purely for communication. So that's why I chose MailChimp, right? Organizing events, Facebook events definitely takes the cake. Eventbrite, Google Forms, definitely. It's a great way to organize things. And they're easy to kind of pull off, and you have a kind of a Google Sheets that backs up it, so you can get all the information super easily. for that kind of stuff. So registrations and whatnot. You don't have to use Eventbrite or anything. You can just do it with Google Forms, but obviously there's some extra things that you can do with Eventbrite. Obviously email. I was pretty sure everyone used Gmail. Most people use Gmail. There is some Microsoft Outlook kind of stuff. There's one here in a private email server. I chose to focus on Gmail and the G apps because I'm a little more familiar with it, and Microsoft Outlook is very powerful. I use it for work and whatnot. But the ecosystem of those apps is not as familiar to me, and I wanted to focus on what most people use. So that's why we went with Gmail. Communication across officers, and this is why I didn't really look into anything super specific, because it obviously you can tell it's based on chapter. Line, Slack, SMS, Facebook Messenger, just emails, group text, that kind of stuff. All over the board, and it's whatever works, right? Whatever is easily adopted by everyone, and Zoom, obviously, and I'm glad we talked about Zoom. Managing your members, Google Sheets, Excel, those two are pretty close to each other. There's only one with MailChimp, and that's why I wanted to kind of like bring attention. You could use MailChimp.
Adam, can you scroll your screen down?
Is it not scrolling?
No, we're stuck on how do you organize event participants?
Yeah. Interesting. There we go. That's weird.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. All right, so it paused the sharing for some reason. I'll slowly go through these, slowly scroll through these again. Communication, online meeting, Google, I'm pretty sure Google Hangouts is no longer a thing, so probably Google Meet, So this is just kind of interesting. This is where you can start and looking kind of stuff, WordPress, Wix, and then kind of Office 365 versus the Google apps and their Slack. Some people use Asana, which is awesome. I love that as far as organizing really complicated events. Asana and Trello, those kind of programs can help really keep things more organized if you have a lot of moving parts. It's a little too much work if it's a small project, so it's not really applicable to a lot of things. But if you have a really big event with a lot of moving pieces, a lot of different people, some kind of software that is like a project management kind of software is always good. But anyways, these are kind of all the different stuff, Google Drive like knocks it out of the park. And then we go into some financial tools, but I didn't really wanted to touch on those too much because it's all different with Zoom, or in the Zoom era or the pandemic era. So, and of course, online banking and stuff like that is different depending on your bank and stuff like that. So there's not really a good way to do tech tips for that. So yeah, that's kind of looking at how to use the data and how I kind of focused on certain things that I think could reach the largest audience. Now the documentation kind of thing, you can see the online collaboration. I kind of created this space, the JETAA space. We go into online collaboration, and I have a splash page here with kind of some ways to get around, and then the wiki section obviously is here or over here, and here's only one page. This is the page that I created, but you can see I did a online document collaboration guide for writing bylaws. This is what PNWJ did to create the new bylaws, and this document kind of showcases everything you really can do with the wiki, with the different styles, and then you can do inserting images into here, and there's some links down at the bottom, and there's different kind of sections and stuff like that. So you can see, and what we can do, you can go in, since this is my account and I can get into it, you can see the edit process. You can see how it kind of looks like the kind of the plain text form of this stuff. And it's pretty simple, the hashes show what's big and what's small. Different links, you can have, it's just a link, right, which is nice. Images are a little bit harder. What's nice is there's kind of an edit mode up here. So like, you know, it's pretty bare bones as far as kind of these collaboration tools, but that's what I like about it. There's not a lot of bunch of bells and whistles, right? It's pretty easy to use, and it looks great, and it's easy to follow and easy to edit and stuff like that. So, you know, creating a new page, all this stuff can be done within the website. You don't have to have any kind of technical expertise in it. So this kind of online collaboration space can improve, and we can get a lot of different pages, and we can kind of go through all of that stuff. What's nice is that at the higher level here, each of these repositories can have different things. So we can expand here and have different software projects as well. So maybe we want to create our own app, right? Or a membership app that you can kind of connect and do all of the nitty gritty of chapter organization within your phone, and it's specific to your chapter. It could live here, but that's kind of cool, kind of document organization. And then kind of the last thing I wanted to show is kind of the power of Google Apps if you get real down into it. So this is kind of the space where you can create kind of interactive software backed by kind of your information. And I wanted to come up with a demo that didn't show any personal identification. So I went with the NatCon 2020 registrations, and we're just going to kind of look at when people signed up and how many people signed up and stuff like that. So you can see there's a bunch of code back here, but it's hidden, right? So all this code is here. And what I'm doing is I'm like, this is the sheet's name, right? We can kind of start it off, and we loaded the sheet in, and then we can create a table based on the registration, right? And there's a bunch of stuff that's going on behind the scenes, but I hid it so it looks a little more fresh and clean. Obviously, you can do this in Google Sheets, right? You can create different tables based on different stuff. So you can see these are kind of the totals at a glance of what people have done. So, you know, and I have it organized by chapter and that kind of stuff. And we can go down deeper, and we can create even more interesting visuals that are a little more dynamic. So what we can do is we can create line graphs across dates, so we can see how the registration went from, you know, the 28th all the way to the 4th of December, and it's, you know, kind of a steady line. But what we can do is we can go by chapter, and we can say, oh, you know, New York did a lot of different stuff. Let's see how they did. It's like, you can see this step. Like, it doesn't really give me good information. I kind of want to know when they did it. So we can go to a bar graph, and we can go, oh, okay, this is kind of the curve of when people registered, and you see like peaks at different places. Or we can go to a different chapter, right? We can see when DC was very good. They, you know, registered before everyone before the 3rd and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting, and this is all free through Google. And if you have someone that is familiar with this kind of stuff, we can kind of create some very powerful tools to help organize your data and really look into things and create fun stuff. And this can be used to kind of like, I need all of the members that are in Idaho that registered in the last 5 weeks. You can set that up to do that, and it'll spit out as table, and then you got that there. And you can make it a little more user-friendly this way with drop downs and typing and stuff. If they're not, if some of your officers don't want to deal with Google Sheets or that kind of stuff, you can kind of create these kind of interactive experiences for the less tech savvy. Or actually, I like to use these because it's easier. Once I get it in, I can go in and do this. I don't have to go and redo the filters every time. I can just go and load this up and hit play, and it'll just kind of push it out. So that's kind of a smattering of different demos that you can do. Obviously, the hard part is getting them written and working and stuff like that. So that's basically it for my demos. I'm going to stop sharing here. If anyone has any questions or whatnot. Oh, also, yeah, I didn't mention that's the demo that I did with the Google Sheets. The visualization, I already had it set up, but it does authenticate against your email. So you can't get to that sheet if you don't have access to it with Google Drive. So none of you could go in there and see this information because you don't have an account attached to that Google Drive sheets, which is nice because getting security and authentication for free is amazing. Like security and that stuff is a huge nightmare. It's a huge headache, and bigger, badder fish are better at it than us, than me. Like Google do it. I'm okay with this. They have the password. It's linked to the website and that kind of stuff. So, all right, that's my big spiel. I went on for quite a while. No one stopped me, so I just had to keep going. But we can open up to this discussion now. I wanted to throw all this fun stuff out and then get the juices going. So now we can open it up to anything and everything.
Yeah, I've been trying to track the chat a little bit. I did see Jocelyn from Chicago also. I'm just going to do a quick shout out. Thank you for putting that up there. There are a lot of resources due to this COVID era, and a lot of companies are putting out these boot camps and things. I know I've taken a few shorter ones, especially related to my professional life, my work. If you're not familiar, or a lot of you may have already done this, but do a little research. Try to find some of these resources to familiarize with some of these technologies, because I think it is all out there if you're willing to look for it. But yeah, thank you, Jocelyn. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and another thing with this kind of collaboration space, the more people that are aware of this, the less we're reinventing the wheel. Especially with software and writing code, it's a huge investment. And if we can write it and someone else can utilize it, and if we can write it in a way that it's chapter agnostic, would be amazing. Because yeah, coding and working out the kinks and the bugs and stuff like that, it's definitely a huge time investment, depending on the scope of the project and stuff like that. So getting it to work and getting users is a huge deal. So writing code and then getting a bunch of users is like the ultimate goal. So the more people we can get to use the software that we create is amazing. I would love to create an app or some piece of software that every chapter utilizes or across the world. I'd be super, super pumped about it. Going on my resume, all that fun stuff,
Adam, you might want to mention the tech desk again. I know that
Yes.
the presentation yesterday mentioned it, but tying that back into this conversation.
For sure. Yeah. And Eden, super awesome. He's heading up the tech desk over at JETAA. And there is a Slack group for that. Obviously, I'll probably let JETAA kind of work on how to get into that. So I would definitely contact them if you want to get into there. I know, Megan, yeah, you're definitely a part of it. I love all the stuff that you post in there. But yeah, at an international level, there is kind of a tech movement. So going at the international level is even better, trying at the national level, but ultimately it should be international for all of this stuff. And that's why I made a kind of a generic JETAA account for GitHub, right? I didn't say JETAUSA. I didn't say PNW JETAA. I just said JETAA, and I just kind of put a generic JETAA in there, with the kind of goal to get everyone on the international level of any alumni to collaborate and add stuff there.
I have a question.
Sure.
How do you think, first off, thank you. Like, technology is only so great until it doesn't work, but then when it does work, it's amazing. So as I experienced in my presentation earlier, laughing because it's true. Kind of curious of each of your opinions on, like, especially, hopefully, as Megan said, AC after COVID, like, where do you think tech, besides like the obvious of like, oh, it makes it easier to communicate with members at a distance, and it makes it easier to like receive email not from your postal box, like, where do you think like the JET community is going, or where would you like it to go when it comes to using tech, especially post-COVID? When we get like real life interactions and I can hug everyone.
Yeah. Do you have something, Adam, or is it okay if I go?
Yeah, go. You can go first, for sure.
Sure. So
Me.
just a little thing that I have is that I think that most of our chapters realize the value of what we have started doing in this COVID era, this post-COVID era. I think we are, our chapter is intending on keeping a lot of the events because I think that there's a big opportunity for having, maybe remote interaction, remote social interaction, in addition to having in-person, like job fairs and things like that, that we will hopefully have once we can actually gather again in a public space. But I think that post, AC, after COVID, after we have a reliable vaccine and people are able to gather again, I think that we're still going to kind of continue using a lot of the technologies that we have started using in the COVID sphere. I think that that's where we're trending, and there's a lot of value in what we've done so far that I don't think is just going to be gone, thrown away once we can have in-person events again and be collaborating in person.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of the hybrid approach, right? In person plus tech. So from a distance and in person, having meetings where, so for example, having executive, board meetings where there is a gathering place, but it also is streamed, right? So you have a Zoom computer set up and at the end of the table, and you have your members that are too far away or they didn't have time, or they can attend, definitely have that. And same with NatCon. Hopefully we can set up, if we do it, hopefully we do it in person next year. And I would love to have it streamed, basically, for anyone that is not attending as an official delegate can kind of pop into the streams and be like, get to see this different kind of stuff. So opening up, like the reason all this tech is here is to make it more accessible. I mean, the goal is to make it more accessible to everyone and get people more involved. Tech isn't a complete replacement. We need the in-person socialization and the personal touch to things. But tech can augment it, which I can't wait to hear. And my cat is very lonely, apparently. Yes.
Thank you. And sorry, your cat's lonely. Hi, kitty.
Yeah, she's having a problem. So we can go for another couple of minutes, but we can't. We'll probably go ahead and take another break so people can get their food ready and stuff like that. I guess Faye, if you want to go from here. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
look me up, add tech stuff. I'm on the Slack all the time.
Everybody use Mentimeter. That's
Yes.
all I need to say.
Menti's the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you, Adam and Tyler, for that presentation.